Okay, welcome back, everyone. And if our guests in the room could please retake their seats, and welcome back to our webinar attendees as well. So for our second session, we'll be joining Bronte Campbell, obviously Olympian, extremely successful in her own sporting right, and she'll be talking to my colleague Anthony Smith, who's a business advisory partner in our Sydney office. So they will be joining us, and we're hoping all the technology works this time. So over to you, Anthony. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Nadine. I'm not sure about the technology, but I have got somebody doing some construction work a couple of floors above me by the sound of things, so it just seems to be the run of the day. So look, welcome everybody. As Nadine said, my name's Anthony Smith, currently based in Sydney, and I'm delighted to introduce our guest today, Bronte Campbell. So just by way of introduction, Bronte probably doesn't need an introduction, but those who followed the Tokyo Olympics, especially those that were locked down, it was a great thing for a couple of weeks just to follow what was going on with the Olympics. Bronte was featured on TV, and probably for me, the first stand-up and jump out of the chair event when she and the team won the 4x100 freestyle relay, and broke a world record, which was phenomenal. Bronte was born in Malawi, which we'll delve into later on. She's a dual Olympic gold medal winner and a world champion. So we'll go through that a little bit in detail as well. And also the famous siblings, Bronte and Kate, are the first Australian siblings to compete in the Olympics in the same swimming team, and I think the first siblings since 1972 Olympics. So pretty amazing stuff. She's also written a book, which is released in September. We've got to give that a plug, Bronte, Sister Secrets, which is about the lessons from the pool and the podium, which, as I said, just released, and we'll find out where we can get that book. Look, the numbers speak louder than the words. 3 Olympics at the tender age of 27, Bronte, I think, and also 27 international swimming medals. Phenomenal effort. And now back at home in Bondi. So, for those who don't know the Sydney geography, the suburb next to Bondi is very close to Bronte. So Bronte joins us to talk about her journey, her career. In such a short period of time, it's amazing how you can pack so much into one life. And we want to also find out what she's going to be doing in the future. So Bronte, welcome.
Hello, thank you, Anthony. Thanks for a great introduction.
Yeah, so I might just keep on going and just start with questions, and we'll probably get a lot of questions from the audience. But I might just run through the questions that are probably on everybody's mind. But through your swimming career, I mean, just probably give us a background, probably from first coming to Australia, and then from Malawi, a bit of background about Malawi, which probably many people don't know too much about, and also how you fell into swimming, whether you love it or whether it's something you're passionate about, or whether it's something that you're great at and you just want to keep on doing. And then just tell us where you're heading next.
Great. Well, I came to Australia in 2001. I was 7 years old, and I just watched the Olympics in 2000, back when we were in Malawi. So Malawi is a tiny little country in Africa. It borders on Mozambique. Sort of sometimes gets drawn as part of Mozambique because it's really that small. It's got a big lake in it, and that's about it. We had one traffic light in the city where I grew up, and that didn't work most of the time because the power didn't work. When I went back for a visit in 2010, as you come out of the airport, there's a big sign that says "Tarred Roads, new innovation from Malawi." So that's where I grew up, which is a long way from where I ended up in my life, which I feel very, very weird to have gone so far in one lifetime. But my family immigrated to Australia in 2001, and like I was saying, I just watched the Olympics, and I decided that if I was going to go to Australia, then I'd better be a swimmer. I'd always loved swimming. My grandmother used to teach the kids in the backyard. My mum taught me, so it's this like love of swimming that's been handed down through the female line in my family. And when we came to Australia, I joined my local swim club with the goal of going to the 2012 Olympics. I was 7 years old at that time. I used to walk myself down to the pool. We lived in walking distance, luckily. And I'd try to be there 6 days a week. And my coach turned me away at one point and was like, I don't want to see you here. You're 7 years old. You are not allowed to come any more than 4 times a week. So it was just this burning passion and desire that I had for swimming. I loved being in the water, but loved that feeling of this is something that I'm also good at. Like I could feel that this is something that I really, really wanted to do and had somewhere where I could achieve everything I wanted in the swimming pool. It was the first place where I got to see what hard work equaling success looks like. I got to see what happens when I put in 3 months of hard work and then I got to see results straight away. You don't often get that straight linear line. So I think that was really appealing to me as a 7-year-old. It was 10 years later that I made my first Olympic team. I did actually make the 2012 Olympics, which was my goal as a 7-year-old. The road from what I thought it would look like when I was 7 to by the time I actually made it was so different to what I thought it would be. I thought it'd be a lovely little straight line from A to B, not the case. But I did go to the 2012 Olympics and I was pretty young then, just turned 18 by the time the Olympics came around. So it was a good experience for me, and then built on that throughout the rest of my career, which has now been going for 10 years. It makes me feel very old. You were saying at the young age of 27, I'm the third eldest person on the team. I'm basically the grandma. So it's nice to be young in some context.
Yeah, so when you get to my age, everybody's young. So I think just on that, in Malawi, do you still have family there?
I still have family in South Africa. So lots of my family is still back in South Africa, but none of the rest of my family is from Malawi.
Okay, and there's big lakes there. Is that correct?
There's a big lake. It takes up a third of the country. There's a few hippos and crocodiles in that lake, but we did a lot of swimming in that lake as I grew up. We learned to get out of there pretty quickly if you heard the hippos coming.
Yeah, that may explain why you're so fast. So, and a sprinter, so it's a short run. So, no, thanks. That's great background. Look, and I think the amazing thing is, yeah, you were 17 years old when you first appeared on our TVs, and that's why we think you've been around for so long. So, and Olympics are sort of they mark time for a lot of people, and obviously they marked a bit more time this year because we got them a year late. With that process, I mean, it just popping in and out of people's, I suppose, consciousness too. In those years when you're not competing or there's no big events, do you notice the difference in the media and the attention? And did it bother you?
No, it doesn't bother me. I think swimming is very interesting in that every 4 years people are very intensely interested in it. And then the interest sort of peaks a little bit. There's like sort of second peak around Commonwealth Games, but not quite as much interest. But every year we've got a major competition. So a 4-year cycle goes an Olympics, and then a World Championships, a Commonwealth Games, and a Pan Pacific Championships in the same year, and then World Championships, and then back to Olympics again. So every year there's this major meet, and you do sort of exist in a little bit of a bubble, and I try and maintain that bubble and not think about how much this means to other people on the outside, because I think that's where you get a little bit stuck in trying to meet other people's expectations. But for me personally, going to a World Championship, that is also a peak event for me, even though there's much more attention at the Olympics. It's the same people, it's the same level of competition. So preparing for World Championships, there's no difference for me in the intensity of my preparation than preparing for an Olympic Games. It's just no one cares. No one outside of swimming really cares about it, which in some ways can be quite freeing. But it's also very funny because it's a lot of work for a different sort of payout than if it was at the Olympics. And that's something I've learned to deal with in my career, is that you never know where the top is until you're on the other side of it. You don't know where your peak is until you're coming down the other side. So learning to appreciate those highs as you're having them, but also appreciating that a lot of my sport is about timing. I think we can talk a bit later about the the postponement of the games by a year and what that meant and adding another year. But it's the same in the whole aspect of how swimming works. To peak once every 4 years is an insane thing. And for me, I had my best results on the world stage in 2015, the year before the Olympics in 2016. And then January 2016, my shoulder injury started, and I competed in the Olympics in 2016, won gold in the relay, came fourth in the 100 freestyle by 0.05 of a second, which if you're when you blink, that's 0.1 of a second, so it's half of the blink of an eye after 4 years of work. And it's really it's a timing thing. I don't like to say it as a luck thing, because I don't think there's a lot of luck or good or bad luck involved. But if I hadn't been injured, if something had gone slightly different in that race, there's so many what ifs. But you just learn to make peace with the ups and downs of your sport, and appreciate the highs while you're having them, because you don't know where the next step is.
Yeah, thanks. You actually stole some of my thunder. I was going to ask you about 2015, which was your peak. You won the 100 and the 50 meters freestyle and beat a legend or two in that. And was everything just right then, or was it? Were you feeling better? Were you great on the days? What was different? I know you sort of touched on it, but was there anything in particular?
There's nothing in particular or special or different about that. I think there's one way to define good performance at a major meet, and it's sort of just like an ordinary performance done on an extraordinary day. So that was it had been my third year on the team. I was 21 years old, sort of getting to a bit more physical maturity than I had when I was younger, a lot stronger than I'd been when I was younger, a lot more experience over those 3 years. And it was just accumulation of all those back-to-back years and blocks of training building on each other, then with no injury as well. The time I swam in the 100-meter final there, that still would have got bronze at this Olympics just passed, but at the time it was the second fastest time in the world, and that had ever been swum outside of the super suits. But I've exceeded that time since then. It's no longer my PB. So there was it's been an interesting moment or an interesting journey for me, from everything was sort of going well and everything was laid out. Like that was a very linear trajectory from making the team in 2012 to slowly getting better each year and being able to build and winning in 2015. And then the line after that has not looked the same because injury and a lot of challenges. And that's been more interesting for me is in 2018, when I won the Commonwealth Games, I swam a personal best at that meet, which was 0.3 faster than I'd swum in 2015. And that journey is a lot more interesting for me because it required so much more of me to go 0.3 faster than it required and improve 2 seconds from 2012 to 2015. So it's been very up and down. But yeah, to answer that question, there's nothing specific. There was just nothing wrong, and it was sort of an expected outcome. But yeah, like I said, 2018 was probably more unexpected, and I place a lot more pride on that performance than I do on 2015.
And do you, just on that, were you more conscious, or did you have more negative things in your mind, or do you have more negatives in your mind now than you did back when you were younger? I mean, does it, I find as you get older, you tend to have, the weight of the world seems to come down on you, whereas younger, it seems to be everything's great. So did that make a difference at all?
Yeah, I definitely think that makes a difference. I notice it as I get older. When I was young, you're like, oh, I'm swimming, like this is great, this is so fun, this is what I always wanted to do. And then, I mean, particularly for me, injuries and being in pain constantly is quite draining. And you get a bit mentally tired. And then the pull of other things outside of it. I chose to be a swimmer when I was 7 years old, and it's all I wanted to do. And I did very well at school. I'm actually so close to finishing my uni degree. Talk to me in a month and I'll be done. So we're getting through that as well. But it was everything I ever wanted. But as you get older, I just start looking around at all the other options that are out there in the world. And there's a very strong pull for me to go and try something new after a very long time of dedicating all my energy to one thing.
Yeah, we might get onto that a bit later in terms, because there's obviously a lot to discuss there, and you may not have even made up your mind what you're going to do. But yeah, so with the Tokyo Olympics, how was that different? Probably prior to going to the Olympics, at this point, probably of the deferral, and probably also at the Olympics. I don't think, just from a spectator's point of view, on TV, we didn't really notice that there wasn't any crowds there. There seemed to be enough loud Aussies there to make it all seem like there's a good event. So so the disappointment or whatever in 2020, and how was the Olympics compared to the others, and did you enjoy it just as much?
Every Olympics I've been to has been very different. Tokyo was different for everybody though. It was such a weird build up. So I'll take you back to that day when it got postponed. I think it was just at the start of March. So coronavirus was just hitting Australia. We all remember what it was like. We're like, oh, this can't be for real. We could not have imagined the reality that we're sitting in now. But I went to training that morning at 5 a.m. I wasn't stoked about it. Wasn't feeling great, but went and did it anyway, which is what we're supposed to do. And then by 10 o'clock, we were hearing whispers about it. And then by that afternoon, it was like the Olympics is done. And we were in a peak phase of training. We trained 9 times a week in the pool, 3 times in the gym, 2 Pilates, 1 yoga, 2 physio, 1 massage. So it adds up to about 50 hours a week of time that you're putting towards this goal and this dream. And then suddenly at that point, it wasn't the goalposts have moved. It's done. This may not happen. So it was a huge change within 12 hours. And what I learned from that was not to complain about the bits of the thing that you're doing that you don't like. Because once it got taken away, I was like, I cannot believe I was complaining about going to training this morning. All I want to do is go to training. There's no pool available. There's no event available. So having it all taken away all in one go sort of stoked my fire to come back and make sure that I gave it a good go in the next year. Not that 18 months was very easy. Doing a lot of training by myself without a swimming pool, trying to adjust to what it looks like when you don't have an environment to train in, and you have to try and make changes very quickly. I chose to look at it as a gift of time that I'd been given. I didn't necessarily want it, but now that I had it, what was something I could do with that? And I stripped out all my gym and went and found a new gym coach and rebuilt from the basics up. And the logic behind that was trying to address some of my issues with movement patterns around my injuries. So that was really successful. It meant I had 5 or 6 months of really terrible swimming. But now that I had this time to play with, that was something I'd never had the time to do before, because we have a major meet every single year. And going into 2021, that meant my injury was probably at its lowest level of pain that it's been in 5 years, which is a pretty fantastic way to get to approach an Olympics. But it did mean that my times leading in were a lot slower. So lots of people had written me off before qualification had even come around without realizing what the story was. But I don't mind that. I like it when someone writes you off and you get to come back and prove them wrong. But in terms of how it was actually different, it was just different in levels of uncertainty. We always like to have a plan. I think everyone's experiencing uncertainty. You always like to have a plan and know when things are going to happen, and that plan getting taken away and then it getting given back to us, but with this caveat of maybe it won't go ahead. There was always that hanging over us of maybe this is all for nothing, maybe it'll get cancelled. Even when we arrived in Tokyo, in the village, and the village started filling up with more and more people, and there was a few people and countries that were quite non-compliant with the mask protocols. We're like, is there going to be an outbreak here? Will this be cancelled 2 days before? So it was just a level of uncertainty that we've never had before, which was an interesting thing to deal with as a whole team more than an individual, particularly for the young guys. So trying to alleviate any anxiety they had around that. And I just approached it by being like, what else are you going to be doing? You've already committed to it. Better to be over prepared for something that doesn't happen than to be underprepared and it doesn't, and then it goes ahead and you're sort of left behind. And then when we actually got to competing, it was still very surreal. As you said before, I was on the first, it ended up being the first morning of finals, and we were still in that phase of, is this actually happening? Are we actually at the Olympics after this whole build up? Walking out into the stadium, you're right, you don't notice that there's no crowd because they pump a lot of music. Towards the end of the meet, as we all finished our races, we were able to be in the stands and cheering for our teammates, which is actually really great because normally when the stadium's full, you can yell out to your teammates behind the block and they can't hear you at all. But now we could just yell out straight to, say, Matt Temple swimming his 100 butterfly. We just yell out to Matt, and you can like turn around and look at us, and you get that really strong connection and that feeling that you're not alone when you're behind the blocks, because this is a very lonely place. You leave the team 20 minutes before, you go into the underground, like beneath the stands, there's a marshalling area, so you got to stay there for 20 minutes. You don't know anyone there, everyone's your competitor in there, and then you walk out behind the blocks and you compete essentially alone, and then you come back to the team environment. So it was great to have that extra support just before they dived in. It was quite nice actually. And then yeah, so we did that first race, and the only time I realized there wasn't a crowd was when we finished and we got out, and then it was just quiet. They weren't playing music then, so it was still very surreal. The whole sort of first 3 or 4 days was very surreal for us as a team, and then everyone clicked into gear, and we all realized there are real Olympic medals on the line. This wasn't a dream. This is actually happening.
Yeah, well, I think it was a great spectacle. Anyway, my point of view. So let's talk about the challenges on the way there. So it's a long road, but yeah, that injury that you had, as far as I know, shoulders are pretty important to swimming. So especially what you do. So what happened there? How'd you come back? And at any time did you lose faith that you would get back?
It's been a very up and down journey. So my left shoulder and neck are sort of the biggest problem. I've also got a right hip issue and my back. So it's basically my whole body being like, excuse me, but what have you done to me for the last 10 years? It's not okay. And it's been a really interesting learning experience for me. I think my first way of attacking it was a mind over matter sort of mentality of, okay, I'm just going to push this to the side. I can make this work anyway. I'm just going to push through. I'm going to keep trying to do the things that I know are going to make me good as a swimmer. And it took about 2 years to realize that doesn't really work. That a better way of looking at it was looking at how creative I could be and accepting the injury as part of who I was now, and accepting it as part of my physicality, and then learning what to do with that now that was my base level. So rather than trying to do the things that I was able to do before, which seemed like the best path to getting me better and back to where I was before, it was trying to figure out what the new way was and being a bit more flexible. And not, this is very hard for sports people, not pushing the pain away and minimizing it, but actually stopping and listening to what it was trying to tell me. So my go-to for the first 2 years was to push through the pain on every single session until a point where I couldn't anymore and the whole thing would collapse, and then I'd have to have 3 or 4 days or a week trying to get it moving again. And that's not sustainable. That's a terrible idea. But listening to those warning signs early and knowing where the tipping point was, so knowing where you could push it a little bit further and know that it was still going to recover and you're going to be able to get the best out of it the next day. And that's how I approached it leading into 2018. At the end of 2017, had a bit of a breakdown one day. I was like, I don't know how I'm going to keep doing this. I can't see myself doing this for another 3 years until I get to Tokyo. I just can't deal with this level of pain and this level of like mental anxiety that you have to put into every single session. Just thinking about, if I push it hard here, will it come back tomorrow? That constantly weighing up the pros and cons of everything is exhausting. So I said it to myself, as soon as Com Games was over, I was going to have 3 months off, which is the longest I've had off since I was 7 years old. And alleviating that idea that I had to keep going, just had to keep pushing until 2020, giving myself a deadline was really helpful. And 2018 was a combination of pushing through a lot of stuff in 2016 and 2017, and then also providing myself with the opportunity for a break. I really think that made a huge difference to my pain levels leading into 2018, and then achieving my best ever time in the 100 freestyle.
And just in that process, what sort of role did your sister play in your recovery and things like that? Was she help? Did she drive you on, or you know, how did she have any bearing on that sort of challenge you were going through?
Yeah, so Kate and myself have been competing with each other since, well, forever. I made the team with her in 2012. We do the same events, so I purposely say we're competing with each other, not necessarily against each other, even though it looks like that a lot of the time. Kate's had her own injuries in the past. She'd just come back from a shoulder surgery in 2013. She'd had it, so she understands what it's like and was a huge support to me. She's always a huge support to me. She's my older sister. She looks after me. She thinks I can't do things. No, she doesn't. She you know, that older sibling really wants to look after the young ones. We're actually, there's 5 siblings. There's 5 of us, so she looks after everyone. But she was always there for me and made sure that I was well looked after. And having her alongside me the whole journey has been hugely beneficial. I know it looks like we're competing against each other, but that competition's been very good. I've got her in training every single day. From the time when I was 17 years old, she was one of the best swimmers in the world already by that point. And I got to train with one of the best people in the world every single day. Not only that, I lived with her at that point. So I got to see what it looks like and model myself off that and take inspiration from it and really learn from it. And I don't think that without having Kate pushing me on the whole time, I don't think I would have got to where I've got to. So it's easy to look at me coming second and be like, your sister's the reason you've come second because she's won. But she's also the reason I came second and not 8th, or second and not 16th, because without her there demonstrating and pushing me on in training and in racing, I don't think I would have got to where I got to at any point in my career.
Cool, and no doubt you pushed her along too, I'd say. So, so that's very good. It's good to hear. So, what about the team? I mean, it's swimming. So there's so much discipline and personal discipline, and then does the team sort of drive you on and keep you training, or is this all internal?
It's probably very different for me now than it was when I first started. It's a very weird concept. So swimming is odd in that you train in your own little squads all throughout the year, and then you are selected onto the team 5 weeks before the major competition, and then suddenly you're the Dolphin swim team, and now you've got to go and perform as a team, and you're judged, yes, on your individual performance, but the whole team is judged on how the team performs. So it's a bit of a weird concept, especially because 5 weeks previously, some of the people that you're now on a team with, you were racing against in order to get a spot. So our trials work, you go to trials, you've got one shot. If you come first or second and swim the qualifying time, which is top 8 time in the world, then you qualify. So there's going to be people on the team who are racing each other and competitors 5 weeks earlier, and now they're teammates. I've been part of the athlete leadership group for the last 5 years. And it's been a big part of what we're trying to do is build that team environment. Like I was talking about earlier, behind the blocks is a very lonely place. So the team has to be a place where you know you're valued and accepted regardless of performance. Everybody in there has a very high performance mindset. That's why they've qualified for the team. We don't do a lot of work on trying to motivate anybody or drive their excellence, because that's a very intrinsic thing by that point, and it's between them and their coach, and they know what they're doing. So what we focus on is valuing the person as they are, and then celebrating performance on top of that. And it's been a long work in progress, because that's not really that's not really a mindset that you think about when you think of high performance sport. You think about it as cutthroat and brutal, and definitely that's been previous leadership styles in our sport. But we've had very good leaders on our team who supported this vision that we had, and it's made the team a much more enjoyable place. But it's also, I'm not going to say it's the main contributor, but this last Olympics is the most successful swim team we've ever had. And that includes going back to golden eras of swimming, 2000, 2004, those times when we were really seen as world dominant. So I think it definitely ends up having an impact on performance. Our goal was not just to impact performance, but to impact experience. If you create a good experience, that will eventually impact performance. We used to see swimmers coming into the sport and they'd maybe stay 3 or 4 years on the national team and then they'd leave. If we can create a better experience, maybe people are staying 5 years, maybe they're staying 6 years. That experience that they bring to it, there's extra 2 years that they get out of it. What does that give to the sport? What does that give to the team? And how much more performance can you get out of them? So it's sort of a long-term strategy, and so proud of the team in Tokyo and getting to see just how tight-knit everybody was. And from when I joined the team in 2012, when, how old was I? 17, just turned to 18 by the time the games came around, and nobody would speak to me, and I was the rookie and no one cared about me, and there was absolutely nothing, and I didn't feel like I belonged or that I had any value beyond what I could contribute in the pool. So it puts an extra pressure on your performance. You're like, the only way my team is going to value me is if I go out and perform. And you already got so much pressure on yourself because you want to perform in your own right. But having your team become your family when you're away is really, really important.
Yeah, no, that's great, and it looked like you're all having a good time over there, which is unusual. So, with those sort of events, it must be very tough and very competitive, and a lot of great competitors there that are very much driven to winning as opposed to having a great time. So, what happens next? Where do you go next? And probably when you answer that question, also tell us a little bit about what you enjoy doing outside swimming, and that may tell us where you're going next. So.
Oh, I wish I could tell you exactly where I was going next. I don't know. But as I was saying, I'm about to finish my business degree. I'm back in gyms now. Gyms are open. It's exciting for us in Sydney. So I'm back being able to get strong and figure out what I'm doing down in Sydney. So my coach used to be down in Sydney. He's moved back to Brisbane. I've remained here. He's been my coach since I was 7 years old. So it's a big change for me, looking at what the next little bit looks like. Commonwealth Games is next year. I'm not sure if I'll go to that. We'll have a look, see what I can do with coaches down here, possibly. Equally very unsure about Paris. Everyone keeps saying, oh, it's only 3 years away now. The pandemic's only been going for 18 months, just over 18 months. It's been an eternity. 3 years is a really long time. But I'll have a look at it as we go forward. As I was saying earlier, that the pull of getting to do other things is quite strong for me. So I'll be doing some internships and other opportunities around Sydney just to see what else is out there. Challenge myself in a new way. It's not that I don't love swimming, and I may come back to it yet. We don't know, but it's time to see what else is out there.
Cool. Now, conscious of time, I'm probably up for time. I don't know if there's any questions for the audience, but just one funny thing that comes to mind. If you're going to Paris, make sure you probably need to take a submarine with you. So we're not too popular over there at the moment. So, yeah, no, I'm sure it's a big decision and something that, once you make the decision, that you have to commit. And I'm sure there's a lot of work in getting there. So I don't know if there's any other queries there from the audience or anything. Here we go. Just if you've got some more time, Bronnie, we might just go through and just go a little bit. So what are your lessons for building team cohesion? How do you do that? I mean, it's obviously a fairly new thing with the swimming teams, but any ideas?
I mean, all I can speak to is my experience and how we built it. It was a very clear, for us, it was a very clear vision of where we wanted to go. Everyone talks about aligning with values. Yes, we have our values of courage, unity, and excellence, which are the same as Swimming Australia as a corporation. So nice to have that alignment. But then for us as a leadership group, it was breaking down what those values look like in behaviors, what we actually want to see that displayed as, and we picked 2 or 3 behaviors per value. And then we talked to people who we thought already were sort of exemplifying that. Obviously, there's 5 of us in leadership group, so 5 of us have to definitely show those values. But then talking to the key people on the team, they're normally the most high performing people on the team who have a lot of sway, and then aligning those people to the behaviors that we thought would best suit them. And then just talking to them about it, being like, we think like you're already displaying this, we'd like you to put in a little bit more in this area, and really building that sort of top-down model, as well as being just very clear with our language. So we had a few key phrases. Our key sort of thing for the team was, "I've got your back," and we could say that in any scenario. So you could say that before someone goes out behind the block. You could say that when someone comes back and they're disappointed after a bad performance. That was one of the key areas we had identified as causing perceived division in the team, is the division between the people who had done well and hadn't done well. And that wasn't because nobody liked the people who hadn't done well. It's just when you come back, no one knows what to say to you because you look devastated and they don't know what the right words are. But just physical contact is a big thing, probably not appropriate in the workplace, but big thing around sport. Huge things that does to your endocrine profile. If you want to talk about cortisol and how to reduce it, physical contact's one of the biggest ones. So being able to just clasp your teammate on the shoulder and say, "I've got your back," no matter what the performance was. That was a very key touch point for us. And then we created a mantra of "we make each other better." So rather than an individualistic approach, that was a mantra, and using the language all the time was really powerful. And it took a while. Like, we started this 5 years ago, and we really saw it starting to come to fruition in 2019. We had a really successful World Championships, and one of the best teams I've been on as well. And then really came together in 2020, which was brilliant considering we hadn't seen each other for 18 months. So it was even more surprising and rewarding that it had still carried through all that long absence.
That's great. Now, just one. This is a nice quick one, and you have to give us the honest answer. What's the relationship like with the USA team? So.
That's a great question. We have a great adversarial relationship, but a lot of respect there as well. Not all of them, but the American that I've competed against for lots of my career, she's one of the few people that's tried like mind games on you or something, or like getting in your space and trying to intimidate you, and you're just like, what are you doing with your life? Just like reevaluate. It's probably not going to work. It's a bit ridiculous, but it's we have a good friendly rivalry with there. Sometimes less friendly than other times.
Very cool. That's good. That's good. Now, Nadine might have questions from the Perth audience. I just might hand over there. Nadine, is there any other? There's questions here, though.
Yes, thank you, Anthony. We do have one question in the room.
Thanks. Hi, Bronte, Andy Bailey here. Just a quick question on, can you buy medals? You know, we hear Gina Rhino sponsors yourselves in the water polo and the synchronized swimming. What difference does that make? Is it a difference?
It makes a huge difference. So it's hard to quantify what that difference makes. I mean, obviously you can't technically buy medals, but our sport is not one where you're making a lot of money. So as I was talking about before, being able to stay in the sport for long enough to make an impact, being able to capitalize on your experience. The swimmer lifespan used to be very short, not only because of experiences on team, but because they weren't funded enough to be able to keep going as you get older. It's all very well earning $20,000 when you're 17. That's brilliant. But by the time you're 27, if that's what you're trying to use to keep your life afloat, it's not going to work. You're not going to get that far. You're going to have to give energy to something else. You're going to have to start working or find some other way to fund your swimming career, and that's going to take away from your performance. So we've always really appreciated and loved having Mrs. Reinhardt as our patron, because the last few years that's made a big difference to people, being able to solely commit to the pursuit of getting better at swimming, and being able to get by without having to spend your energy somewhere else. So it makes a huge difference, just from a personal perspective. And then if you look back and look at the data, you'll see a trend over Olympics time. So when there's a huge investment in when there's a home Olympics. So in 2000, there's obviously home Olympics. Huge investment started back in like 1993. I think they started investing in Olympic sports. And 2000 and 2004 were our best ever Olympics, apart from this year. And then you see the same thing in London. They started investing early, 2012, 2016, were England's best ever Olympics. So you see this trend where investment leads to this long-term performance, and then as investment tapers off, so does performance. So from a personal point of view, that's the personal, and then the big data also kind of supports it as well.
Okay, I've got more questions here. If we can keep on going, just somebody might have to pull me up because I might stay here all afternoon. So just there's a couple of questions sort of along the same lines here, Bronte. Practical tips for bouncing back from personal setbacks, the injuries, maintaining motivation, striving for high performance, and also keeping your mental health strong. I mean, it's a big thing these days. You've been in lockdown as well for quite a period of time. So anything you can share with us that might help?
Yeah, it's a big question we're all asking ourselves right now, is how to do it and how to just get through. And for me, it's that great saying of like, how do you eat an elephant? Just one bite at a time. For me, that works really well, is breaking something down to what do I need to do right now to get to where I want to go. This is what I did in 2017, 2018, when I was really struggling with injury, is I could not conceive how I was even going to go another 6 months, let alone another 3 years. And ended up breaking down into like, okay, what can I do today? I cannot even think about the rest of it. What can I do right now, today, in this next 5 minutes? And really making it very, very micro for myself. And that's been something that's worked really well when things are big and overwhelming. The same thing with motivation. I'm not always motivated, I mean, most of the time, but there are definitely mornings when you're lying in bed and you're like, I do not want to go to training. I do not want to get up. You cannot face the whole process of, I cannot believe I'm going to have to be in the pool and train for 2 hours, and I'm already sore. I can't imagine what I'm going to feel like on the other side of that. But all you need to do right now, you don't need to deal with that, is roll over and get out of bed, and that takes a second. So you need to be motivated for a second. And then once you've done that, all you need to do is go get yourself ready, and just really spoon feeding myself has been my way of dealing with any sort of big overwhelming thing, as well as overcoming those bits where you're not motivated, because it's really the big obstacles that decrease my motivation and decrease my desire to do things. And the smaller you can make it look, then the easier it is to get past it.
That's great advice. And just one last question, a short one. Can a parent motivate a child to do well, or does it motivation all come within the child? So,
oh, that's a hard one. I don't know if I can answer that. I think I was personally just very motivated child, but maybe this is a good illustration. So I was very motivated. I went to every single training session. I used to count my laps, used to count if I overlapped anyone, and I'd like make them do extra so that they weren't doing less. I was probably a nightmare, actually. And Kate used to turn around at the flags, like walk on the bottom if she could. Didn't really love going to training, wouldn't do it. And we went to our first swim meet. I won 4 golds in our 25 meter races, and age champion, and Kate won a little bronze medal in the 25 meters backstroke, which was great, but not so great when I proceeded to wear my medals around my neck and bring my trophy everywhere. And she snapped and stole them all and hid them, and had that classic jealous moment. And that's when Mum spoke to her and was like, okay, that's great, Kate. You can your bronze medal is great. I've seen you in training. You don't train very hard, and that's fine if that's what you're willing to accept. But Bronte worked really hard for her medals, and I saw that she worked hard for them. So if you want them, rather than stealing them, I think you know what you've got to do. And yeah, from that moment on, Kate decided she wanted to work really hard and became one of the best swimmers in the world. And my biggest competition. So I kind of created my own Frankenstein there. But look, I don't know specifically how much influence you can have if a child doesn't want to do something. But for us, that was a really good and easy illustration of what you need to do to get to success. And our parents never pushed us. It had to be our dream. So we used to have to get up and then at the last moment wake them up to take us to training. So they definitely enabled our success, but they're like, if you don't wake up to go to training, then we just won't go. I'm not setting an alarm. You have to come get me. So it was always the onus was always on us to make it happen if that's what we really wanted.
That's great, Bronte. Look, really great. Appreciate all the insight, all the answers. That's a great story to finish on too. So thank you very much on behalf of RSM and also our guests and clients. And I might hand you back to Nadine and wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony and Bronte. That was really interesting to hear some of the finer details, I think, of actually competing at an Olympics. But also there's always so many parallels between business teams and sporting teams. So there's a couple of the mantras, which I might steal from Bronte. Value the person, celebrate performance, and we make each other better, which I think is so important to remember when you're in a team environment. You know, we can all be lone wolves at times as well in our own industries and sectors. So it's good to remember that the collective power is greater.